From dueling pistols to polymer frame modern marvels, the sidearm has always been more than a weapon. It's a symbol, a backup, a last line of defense. For over 2 centuries, U.S. service pistols have evolved alongside the nation's wars. This is the story of the U.S. Military Sidearm, its design, its evolution, and the legends who carried it. When the U.S. fought for independence in 1775, the concept of a standard issue sidearm didn't really exist. Soldiers carried what they could, often privately owned pistols imported from Europe. The American flintlock pistol, such as the 1775 pattern, was a single shot and smoothbore, slow to reload but reliable for its time. Officers and cavalrymen were the main users since pistols were considered status weapons, but by the early 1800s, the young U.S. government began standardizing arms. The Model 1805 Harper's Ferry pistol became America's first nationally produced military sidearm. 54 caliber flintlock ignition, these were carried by mounted troops and naval officers during the War of 1812. Still, they were inaccurate beyond a few yards and painfully slow to reload. A soldier's main hope was to fire once, draw a saber, and charge. But in decades to come, an invention from the American frontier would change that forever. Now we have Samuel Colt. In 1836, Colt patented a design that revolutionized warfare. A revolving cylinder capable of holding multiple shots before reloading. The Colt Patterson revolver was born, soon followed by the legendary Colt Walker and Colt Dragoon models. By the time of the Mexican-American War, revolvers were redefining close combat. Cavalrymen who once had 1 shot now have 6. The Colt Walker, massive and powerful, could drop a horse at 100 yards. During the Civil War, both Union and Confederate forces fielded revolvers in enormous numbers. The Colt 1860 Army and Remington New Model Army were the backbone of Union sidearms. Southern officers often carried Colt or imported Adams revolvers. Revolvers proved reliable, easy to maintain, and deadly in the hands of skilled shooters. They became part of the American identity. The pistol of the cavalry, the officer, and the frontier lawman alike. But even the best black powder revolvers had limitations. Smoke, fouling, and reloading time, the military needed something faster, cleaner, and more efficient. That answer arrived in the form of metallic cartridges. In 1873, the U.S. adopted one of its most iconic weapons, the Colt Single Action Army, also known as the Peacemaker. It fired the new .45 Colt cartridge, a brass case containing bullet, powder, and primer in one. No paper, no percussion cap, no mess. It was durable, simple, powerful. Carried by soldiers, cavalrymen, and even presidents, the Single Action Army became legendary on battlefields and in folklore. It saw combat in the Indian War, Spanish-American War, and countless frontier skirmishes. For a generation of soldiers, it represented the American craftsmanship and rugged reliability. But technology doesn't stop. While revolvers ruled the plains, a new kind of weapon, semi-automatic, was quietly emerging. By the late 1800s, European inventors were experimenting with self-loading pistols. The introduction of smokeless powder and automatic cycling mechanisms paved the way for faster and more compact designs. The U.S. military tested several models, the Borchardt, Luger, and Mauser C96, but reliability and caliber were often concerns. American doctrine still demanded stopping power over firing rate. Then came John Moses Browning, firearms Jesus himself, the greatest firearms designer in American history. His genius would define the 20th century. Browning's recoil-operated designs led to pistols like the Colt M1900, and later, after years of testing and trials, a weapon that became an American icon, the Colt M1911. The M1911 was unsurprisingly adopted in 1911. Browning's masterpiece became the definitive U.S. military sidearm for over 70 years. It was everything soldiers needed, simple, rugged, and powerful. It fired the .45 ACP round, heavy, slow, and devastating in close quarters. The 1911 served in World War I, II, Korea, and Vietnam virtually unchanged. It was beloved for its accuracy, ease of maintenance, and man-stopping ability. Marines, paratroopers, and officers swore by it. Stories from the Pacific War tell of Marines using their 1911s in last-ditch fights against charging enemies. In Europe, it became the trusted companion of tank crews and pilots alike. Even as other nations switched to lighter calibers and double-action triggers, the U.S. clung to the 1911. It wasn't just a tool. It was an institution. But by the 1970s, the military needed modernization. Logistics and NATO standardization drove the next chapter, one that would end the 1911's reign. In 1985, after decades of service, the 1911 was officially retired and replaced by the Beretta M9, a 9mm semi-automatic pistol of Italian design. The switch was controversial. Many veterans argued the smaller 9mm round lacked the stopping power of the .45 ACP. But NATO required standardization, and the M9 offered higher magazine capacity. Built on an aluminum frame with double-action, single-action trigger, the Beretta was modern, sleek, and accurate. It served through Operation Desert Storm, the Balkans, Iraq, and Afghanistan. However, by the early 2000s, wear and tear, parts issues, and changing tactical demands led the Pentagon to seek out a new modular sidearm, one that could adapt to different missions, calibers, and hands. In 2017, after a decade-long competition, the U.S. adopted the Sig Sauer M17 and M18, military variants of their successful P320. This marked a new era. Instead of fixed components, the M17 is modular. The trigger group can be swapped out between full and compact frames, allowing adaptability for different missions and users. It fires a 9mm cartridge, optimized for best performance and features according to NATO standards. The M17 and M18 are now the standard issue for all branches of the U.S. military. Although the Air Force has stopped testing it due to a recent passing of an airman. Throughout history, the sidearm has been more than just a weapon. It's a mark of leadership, of last resort, of personal honor. From the cavalry officer's flintlock to the Marines in 1911 and the modern soldiers' M17s, the American sidearm affects the nation's own evolution, from handmade craft to industrial precision to modern innovation. Each generation's pistol tells the story of the time and people who carried it.